I spent 10 hours on this and most of it went to the least useful type of ship, submarines. If you don't want to learn the reasoning, at least watch the gear and fleet section. For the Battleship Guts review, check my previous video. First is some submarine disclaimers. They offer low value per unit of investment for new players, especially when they cost rainbow boolins. Submarines can't be used in one of the two hardest endgame content, which are Chapter 16 and Meta Showdown. They can't be used in Meta Showdown. So what's left? If mid to late game players need help with Hard Arbiter or Chapter 14 plus, then submarines could be useful. Some gear I show in this video are expensive rainbows. Rainbow gear is completely optional for subs and lower priority than surface fleet gear. And I also want to remind you that plus 11 G7E Kai is not better than a plus 13 gold G7E, so don't bother crafting the rainbow if you can't afford to plus 13 it. There's one more thing in the game. Currently, U-2501's yellow skill says 70% chance to increase this boat's accuracy by 10%, stacking up to 10 times. This is at level 10. At skill level 1 it would be 1%, at skill level 10 it would be 10%, but that's wrong. It's not affected by the skill level. At level 1 and at level 10, the actual effect is 1% accuracy, stacking up to 10 times. So first in the event shop, there's this gold thingy for 2000 event points. And as you might expect, it's a gold version of what you can buy in the core data shop for 500 core. The purple version has 35 torpedo at plus 10, and it can't be plus 13 or plus 11. So plus 10 is the max, 35 torp. For the gold one, it's 42 torp at plus 10. And 7 torp is basically about 0.7% damage for the submarine. So it is a very tiny difference. However, the gold pressure hull can be plus 13, which makes it go from 42 torp to 50 torp, and 3% Operation Siren Killer. But the 3% Siren Killer is pretty useless because Hard Arbiter is easy, and paying 120 gold plates for 0.8% damage on one submarine doesn't sound like a good deal. Going from 42 to 50 torp, 0.8% damage. So I would just take the 0.7% damage for changing from plus 10 purple into plus 10 gold. And if you're a new player, then that means you can buy one fewer purple one for 500 core data as well. U-2501 is the second rainbow submarine. So now we have to ask a very simple math question. Is 2501 greater than 404? Let's think step by step. 2501 has basically the same oxygen reload combination as 404. She has slightly lower oxygen but higher reload. 2501 doesn't equip a gun in her third slot, instead it's an auxiliary slot. So if you put a plus 10 rainbow oxytorp there, you get plus 100 torp and plus 10 reload stat compared to other submarines. 2501 has higher damage against light armor bosses than 404, and equal damage against medium and heavy bosses. That's because 2501's equipped torpedoes are stronger than 404's equipped torpedoes, but 404 seaplanes make up the damage against medium and heavy bosses. Against light bosses, 2501's flooding makes her damage better than 404's, because flooding doesn't care about armor type, and submarine torpedoes are worse against light armor bosses. So that's personal damage, but on the fleet buff side, 2501 gives 0 buffs, while 404 gives 10% submarine crit rate, which is worth about 3.3% damage for the submarine fleet. Both of them have cross-fleet skills, but 404's cross-fleet is better, and these cross-fleets apply in Operation Siren and in campaign, not in challenge mode. For Operation Siren, you don't even have to summon the submarines. As long as the rainbow submarines are put in the fleet, you don't even have to summon them into the map to get their cross-fleet. 2501's cross-fleet applies 10% evasion debuff for 8 seconds to all enemies, and that's worth about 3% damage, while 404's cross-fleet applies 5% damage taken by enemies for 10 seconds, and 5 is greater than 3. So overall, they are very similar in performance, with 2501 having better light damage, and 404 having better buffing, which makes 404 overall stronger. But even so, there's no point feeling bad about it yet, because your submarine fleet has 3 slots to fill, and there are only 2 rainbow subs. And if you only have enough rainbow boolins for one of them, just pick whoever you like more. And you see, that's the key point. Clearly, 2501's jellyfish rigging and barrage are cuter. This is the gear that U-2501 should use. It's the same as I-404 gear, except that you replace the seaplane with an oxytorp. If after the disclaimers at the start you still want to craft rainbow submarine torpedoes, then I recommend starting with up to 4 of these G7E Kais before considering the Type 95 Kai. On my Regal tier list, each and every submarine has independently curated suggested loadouts based on her oxygen, reload, and skills. I recommend not asking about the specific details. Moving on to submarine fleets, for campaigns, synergy doesn't matter much, but some submarines are better than others. So just go to the tier list and sort by campaign and go top to bottom. Some submarines have special effects, like U-2501 has +1 ammo, so she's a definite slot if you're struggling in chapters 14 through 16. I-404, Leo, Da Vinci, and Baraka each have 1 out-of-range summon, and that will save oil by avoiding the need to move your submarine fleet around on the map. Note that I-404 can die to airplanes if she's unlucky because she surfaces for 3 seconds and doesn't have damage reduction at that time. Tempesta sailing frigates also have +1 ammo if they equip round shot, but they can easily become effectively useless after a few battles on average luck because they lose too much HP, and when they lose too much HP then they retreat from the battle before doing much damage. So among those, Royal Fortune and Mary Celeste are the tankiest ones, I guess, according to Meebot, so they're expected to last the most amount of time on the battlefield before retreating. Single wave bossing is where whole fleets and positions can matter. The best fleets all have 2501 in the flagship position and 404 in the bottom position. It's not that 404 is a bottom, it's just that U-2501 dominates her because a larger percentage of 2501's damage is from her equipped torpedoes. Once you have those two generating intense activity, the third wheel can either support the 2 rainbows or go play with herself. I mean play by herself. I would hope that you know this by the time you have such advanced submarines. When you tap the boxes in the diagonal fleet formation, it's flag in the middle, top on the top, and bottom on the bottom. But when you tap to fill in the boxes from left to right, then it's flag first, then top second, and then bottom third. So who's the best ship to fill in the top slot with? It's not Flasher actually, but Amity. I'm considering Amity's buffs for the surface fleet too. And the next best options are Homura, Flasher, and U-81, as well as Amity against heavy armor bosses. And finally we have U-96 or I-58, and then a bunch of other options off screen that I will not show. Although Flasher has a skill that makes her want to be flag for 10% more torpedo and 10% more hit for herself, U-2501's and I-404's damage is far more important than those small buffs for Flasher. And Flasher is only competitive with these two, Homura and U-81, because she has a slow. When in the top position, Homura and U-81 do more damage than Flasher does. And that's it for submarines. We have several more ships to go through. Next is Prinz Moritz, F tier because she cost me 440 additional cubes after I got Guts and Z15. Actually, she is B tier like Drake, and she is a tank with good damage. Moritz has the same tankiness as Drake, which is 118 or 119% Portland, and she does 9% more damage than Drake. Best of all, Moritz reaches peak damage with easy to get gear, while Drake needs a rainbow gun and 728 blueprints. So let's take a look at the tier list for gear. Here we have B tier for Drake and Prinz Moritz, as well as Admiral Hipper, which I'll talk about next. Prinz Moritz uses one of these 283mm guns for all content. Although she can use the Rainbow heavy cruiser guns, these large cruiser guns are better against everything for Prinz Moritz. Hipper got a unique augment 9 months ago, so from the base purple Hipper, her unique augment increased her DPS by about 39%, and now she got a new retrofit, which nearly doubles her DPS again on top of that, by doubling her main gun mounts and adding some thick stats. So Hipper ends up at lower B tier, I would say lower than Moritz, but still in the same tier, with 3% more DPS than Moritz, that's using a rainbow gun, but 16% less tankiness than Moritz and Drake. So as you can see, if you're limited to purple gear as a newer player, then Prinz Moritz still has 1000 DPS, while Drake dropping from rainbow to purple gear, it's a huge drop in effectiveness. Next we have Elbe META, which is a meta ship, and she has higher damage with worse gear relative to other carriers. but new players can't easily invest in meta ships, so overall she's a mid-gold carrier, which is a skip. For example, Shokaku does more damage than Elbe META, and Shokaku has 10% fleet buff and 10% fleet defense buff as well, half the time. Finally, we have Z14 and Z15, who are typical new event purple ships, which means that new players should absolutely avoid using them. However, they do have DD firepower tech at level 120, which means that late game players will want to level them up. And I don't know about you, but that doesn't look very healthy to me. So in summary, if you're a new to mid game player, then you should definitely pull on the event banner until you get your first guts. And if you happen to get Prinz Moritz while chasing guts, then you should certainly use Moritz. U-2501 is the other ship that's worth using, but that's for much later. You can put her in the fleet now for the cross fleet, but try not to spend too much oil, and definitely not rainbow boolins. Mid to late game players can consider tech. Guts has good tech, which is 2 battleship firepower. Moritz has okay tech, 1 cruiser firepower. U-2501 has super good tech, which is 2 torpedo and 1 hit. Elbe has poor tech, she has reload and aviation, but that's for light carriers only, not for normal carriers. And the 2 purples have good tech for destroyer firepower.